interpreter.
For calling. Oh, I will.
To folks just joining, if everyone could mute and turn off their cameras, that would be great.
It's lovely to see you, but we're asking to turn off people who aren't speaking, turn off your cameras and your microphones.
There's a question in chat about who the interpreters are.
So Jessica and Amina, there's just a comment in the chat of, can the interpreters rename their video with ASL and then their name? That would be helpful. So for folks that are just getting on this call, oh, sorry, oh wait. For folks that are just getting on the call, we're asking that you turn off your video and you mute your microphone so that only the speakers and the ASL interpreters are on the screen. Thank you to everyone who has already joined the call. We're just gonna get 2 more minutes and then we'll start the event.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think I've had similar conversations
Okay. So, hi everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're asking that everyone turn off their video and mute your microphone for the duration of this event so that all the speakers and our ASL interpreters can be on screen. Our ASL interpreters for today are Jen and Amina. Currently, I believe it's Amina on screen. Great, and she's wearing a long sleeve black shirt. She's got long dark hair with some highlights. And she's also wearing a black scarf, sitting in front of a gray wall. For your convenience, click on Settings in the top right corner of the Zoom window. It's that little cog icon. And click Hide All Non-Video Participants so that only people who are speaking are on screen. And if you require access to cart captioning, you can click on CC in the bottom right of your screen for cart captioning provided by AI Media. Yeah, this event will be recorded and posted with captions on Disability Justice Network's website and social media platforms. So currently on screen, it's myself, so I'm Ruby. I use they, them pronouns. I'm a Bengali Muslim homo. I am wearing an orange collared shirt. I have short and dark hair, big nose, and my eyes crinkle up when I smile. Behind me is a bookshelf that has a plant on it and a little statue, and then also another bookshelf that has some records on it and some plants. And then as well on screen currently is Layla. Layla, do you want to do your image description?
Yeah, I'm Layla. My pronouns are they and them. I'm a brown Egyptian dyke with wearing a orange bandana and a pink hoodie. And behind me there are my bed frame and red and orange and yellow paintings. I'm also facilitating.
Okay. Welcome everybody. Thank you for being here with us over Zoom to listen to Alice Wong and Leah Lakshmi Piepzna Samarasinha talk about Alice's new book, Disability Visibility, First-Person Stories from the 21st Century. Sorry, I'm just looking at the chat. Liang says, I was wondering if we could have interpreter video moved up to top instead of bottom. It overlaps with CC. What we could do, an option that works is if you hover over the interpreter's video on the screen. All right, could someone turn off their microphone? Thank you. You can pin their video to your screen by hovering over their video and clicking that pin icon in the top left corner. Someone's microphone is on. If you could just turn that off, that would be really great. Okay. Okay, cool. So once again, I'm Ruby, and facilitating this discussion with me is Layla. We're both organizers in Hamilton, Ontario, and we're excited as hell to be hosting this event today. I'm really happy to be here and be hosting, because for me, disability justice has been about the most creative and honest vision and movement towards freedom. When I think about what organizing is, I think about things like mutual aid, which comes from disabled knowledge and activism. I think about the relationships we build with people and how radical and transformative, joyful accessibility can be. And that's a lot of what reading Disability Visibility reminded me of. So yeah, thank you to Alice and Leah for being here to speak on it.
I'm really grateful to the stories collected in this book for their honesty and emotion, and also I'm grateful to disability justice in general. First of all, for making me feel so much less crazy and like justified in being crazy, and for giving me a really strong framework to understand and politicize my mental illness as a queer Muslim.
So as part of this event, we want it to be understood that we are on stolen land. Specifically for folks from the Disability Justice Network, we live on territory shared between the Mississaugas of the New Credit, the Anishinaabe, and the Haudenosaunee people. The land is governed by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, which asks that all people on the land share in the resources available to them and respect one another and the land in doing so. Disability justice is underpinned by the activism, thought, and lived experiences of Indigenous people with disabilities. In pursuing freedom for all of us, we have to understand that disability justice is tied up in decolonization. The movements are not separate, but interwoven. In understanding whose land we're on, we hope to honor the work that has come before and move continually towards freedom for all of us.
The Disability Justice Network of Ontario, or DJNO, was founded in 2018 by Sarah Jama, Shanthia Bahirathan, and Eminent Dagdachu, with the vision of creating a world where people with disabilities are free to be. DJNO does advocacy work that centers the voices of young people with disabilities and is highly informed by the DJNO Youth Action Council. We want to build political and organizing power in our community, ensure that disabled people have personal and political agency, and look beyond just policy to prioritize access, empowerment, and liberation for people with disabilities, including the creation of sustainable support systems. The DJNO Campaigns Committee is working on the ongoing campaign to pressure the city of Hamilton to remove snow from sidewalks and residential streets, which causes safety and accessibility barriers. The city just released a survey to collect opinions on sidewalk snow clearing for Hamiltonians. The link is on our Twitter page at DJN Ontario, and it will also be linked in the Zoom chat at the end of this event. The research committee recently won an SSHRC grant to analyze data using Stats Canada data sets to understand the lived experiences of youth with disabilities across multiple identities and socioeconomic factors.
So if you want to get involved in DJNO, feel free to visit djno.ca to learn more about us and email info, info, at djno.ca if you are interested in joining DJNO's general membership or either of these committees.
Now for the intros. Alice Wong is a disabled activist, media maker, and consultant. She is the founder and director of the Disability Visibility Project, or DVP, an online community dedicated to creating, sharing, and amplifying disability media and culture created in 2014. Currently, Alice is the editor of Disability Visibility, first-person stories from the 21st century, this event, an anthology of essays by disabled people, which is available now by Vintage Books.
And for Leah, Leah Lakshmi Piepzna Samarasinha is the author of Care Work, Dreaming Disability Justice, Dirty River, A Queer Femme of Color, which was shortlisted for the Lambda and Publishing Triangle Awards, Body Map, Love Cake, which did win the Lambda Literary Award, and co-editor with Ajaris Dixon of Beyond Survival, Stories and Strategies from the Transformative Justice Movement and The Revolution Starts at Home, Confronting Intimate Violence in Activist Communities. She's also a lead artist with Sins Invalid.
We want to shout out Sins Invalid for their incredible work in creating disability justice as a framework through their art and work. Ruby and I watched the documentary together a few weeks ago, and we were so blown away by the incredible performances. We watched it through Canopy, spelled with a K, whose films are accessible through many libraries, including HPL for Hamilton folks. So check it out if you haven't already. That's enough from us. Thank you for listening. We're going to turn it over to Alice now so she can talk about the Disability Visibility Project and how her book came into existence.
Hey everyone. Again, thank you for the introduction to Ruby and Layla, and thank you to DJNO for inviting Leah and I to be here with you all. So I guess, this is my first kind of anthology by a major publisher. I did self-publish a smaller collection of essays on my own called Resistance and Hope in 2018. And it's funny how, if you look back, all these little things, led me to where I am now. And, it's interesting because Resistance and Hope, in terms of an origin story, that was my response to Election Day in the United States in November of 2016. When, just like a lot of marginalized communities, we're like, oh shit, like, everything that we could imagine is going to happen, will happen, and that so many of us were just, dismissed as overreacting, and again, we can see everything that's happened was predicted by marginalized folks right now, in particular in the United States. So I put together a small collection of essays on the relationship between resistance and hope as a response to the fear and the frustration. And, this is again about centering disabled wisdom. And here I am today in 2020 with another anthology that's a little bit larger in scale. It's, less specific about this particular political moment, but very much related because it's about a small sample of stories from the 21st century, meaning stories that have been published since the year 2000 to 2019 by disabled people that's, I personally think is important, that I personally care about, that I feel need to be amplified, And they're all stories that are personal, political, and very much, powerful. This was kind of a labor of love that I just wanted to share with the world. And, I want to preface all of this by saying, there's a lot of anthologies and amazing work by, deaf and disabled, neurodivergent, chronically ill folks already. And, this is just the latest offering into this larger body of work. So I'm not, making this, I'm not, framing this as something that's, exceptional, but it's something that capturing the here and now. It is something I think that's hopefully looking forward to the future. And, my intention is really to give it as for future generations so they can look back and say, oh, this is, what a small sense of what it was like in the early 21st century. So there's a lot of intentions about the future, the past, and the present. And I'm just so grateful to the 37 contributors who agreed to be in this anthology. They are the ones who really, without them, this book wouldn't exist. I want to give thanks to Leah for joining me today. And, Leah and I are friends, but also I'm just always so blown away and a true admirer of Leah's work as a cultural worker, a performer, a writer, activist. And I'm just very excited to be with you all today. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Alice. Leah, are you able to speak to why this project was important to you and what role projects like this play in the broader vision of disability justice and community work?
Yeah, I can try. Hi, everybody. My name is Leah Lakshmi Piepzna Samarasinha. I'm speaking to you from Duwamish territory in South Seattle, governed by the Treaty of Point Elliott. I'm a diasporic Torontonian, so I'm really, really happy to be here and just thanking the DJNO for hosting. I am a 45-year-old non-binary femme of Burgher and Tamil Sri Lankan and Irish and Roma ascent. I've got kind of powder ginger colored skin, pink lipstick, green eyes, and I don't know if you can see it, but wore these for you. These are my spoon witch earrings that my friend Lex, who's a disabled Arab maker, made, and they're just like, yeah, when you really are out of spoons and you need a spoon supplement, you got it. And for people who don't know, spoons comes from a term called spoon theory that a chronically ill person invented to talk about the concept of when you're disabled or chronically ill and you don't have all the energy of the whole able-bodied world. So you've got like 12 spoons. Spoons is like slang for how much energy cubits you have. Some of you already know this. Anyway, just wanted to say. Why is this work important? So many reasons. First of all, I think that storytelling and writing and documenting are ways that as disabled people, we have always cribbed our activism, right? Like, there's this able-bodied idea that activism is just being in the streets with a bunch of able-bodied people marching, and that's all activism is. But as disabled people, we suffer so many different kinds of isolation, including from ourselves, like when you don't know that you can claim disability, you're not able to connect with a disabled community that feels like your kind of people, because there's no disabled community, or the disabled community is all white or straight or cis or apolitical. It's really hard to find a home for yourself. And some of the earliest places that I connected with disabled community, some of the earliest tools that saved my life was writing. There was a zine called Scars Tell Stories that Quoli Driscoll, QWO-LI, DRISKILL, and Colin Donovan, ColinDonovon. I think it's O-N. Anyway, that they created 20 years ago. And I was 25 years old then. I was so sick and so isolated in my basement apartment in Toronto, which then was $400. And it was the first place I saw other young, it was a zine of queer and trans, Black, Indigenous, brown, working class folks writing about our lives. And it was the first place I was like, oh shit, this is the stuff that it has been so unsafe for me to claim, right? I can claim it here. You fast forward 20 years to the Disability Visibility book, and I'm looking at this and I'm like, this is a triumph, because I'm just thinking about, disabled, deaf, neurodivergent, chronically ill people all over who are like, I don't know anybody else who's like me where I live, but I can get this book. And I've got a book a lot of the times can be a community that's in your pocket, or in your screen reader or wherever you put it. And for so long, I say this as a disabled writer, it has been so freaking hard to be able to write disabled writing that is not basic and 101. Care Work came out 2 years ago, and what a lot of people don't know was it was such a struggle to get that book out and to get it out as it was, because when I was writing the pieces that are part of it, I had so many editors who, I would be writing as a disabled queer person of color for other queer disabled people of color first. And I would have these white abled editors who'd be like, oh, do you want to say more about your disability? And they couldn't conceive of disabled people not just writing this kind of tragic or inspirational first person narrative, but to actually write crip politics, crip culture, hard days, questions, thinking, living. And this book coming out the way it did is a big fucking deal, because it's not pandering to white able-bodied people, or I would say white disabled people as its first audience. And there's such important documentation of disability justice history in here, because there's new pieces, and there's also pieces that when I look at them, I'm like, oh, these are so important to our movement. Just a few. This is not all of them, but I'm thinking of, for example, looking at the interview with Patty Byrne, who founded Sins Invalid, about to survive climate catastrophe, look to queer and disabled folks, or Harriet Tubman Collective, the groundbreaking Black, deaf, and disabled collective's statement about police brutality and Black lives, Black disabled lives. So many more. These are pieces that we know of, but that are on blogs or Tumblr, and if you're there when they come out, you read them and then they disappear. And I'm like, it's so important that these are documented and that these can get to folks who are like, maybe I'm just activism and community now. It's really important that this is a book that is majority not white, and that is really cross-disabled. Yeah, I'll just say that. I think that this book is a political organizing tool. It's a community connecting tool. It's a place where people can witness people who look like them, and also people who challenge their ideas of what disability, deafness, neurodivergence can be. Yeah, and Alice, I'm in awe of you. You are such a freaking shit disturber. And I'm so grateful for your cultural activism and work.
Thank you so much, Leah. Yeah, I really felt that in reading Disability Visibility, and in some of your works too, Leah, that it was like being spoken to as like a young queer person, as like a young like Muslim homo, like figuring shit out. And the impact that that had on my life, and like the ways that I've lived and come to discover just like everything I know has like, yeah, huge shift in the way that I approach the world. So yeah, thank you. Now Layla and I will be asking some questions about topics in the book and your work as organizers grounded in disability justice. So yeah, we wanted to give space during this time to honor the work and life of Stacey Milburn, who recently passed away. They were a radiantly disabled writer, organizer, and artist. One of her essays is in disability visibility. Could I ask one of you to read an excerpt and speak to her work and now her legacy as an ancestor?
Yeah, this is Leah. We decided that I'm going to read the first paragraph and then Alice is going to read the second. And if anyone is following along, we're starting on page 268 of the book. I think about Crip ancestorship often. It's tied to Crip eldership for me, a related but different topic. So many disabled people live short lives, largely because of social determinants of health, like lack of health care, inadequate housing, or unmet basic needs such as clean air and water. Other times, the short lives are merely one truth of our body minds, like the neuromuscular conditions of Harriet, Laura, and myself. These were other disabled women that Stacey talks about earlier in the piece. I do not know a lot about spirituality or what happens when we die, but my Crip queer Korean life makes me believe that our earthly body mind is but a fraction, and not considering our ancestors is electing to see only a glimpse of who we are. People sometimes assume ancestorship is reserved for those who are biologically related, but a queer or crypt understanding of ancestorship holds that our deepest relationships are with people we choose to be connected to and honor day after day.
I'm going to read 2 more paragraphs because they're so good, and I really want for us to be immersed in Stacey's wisdom. So here we go. Ancestorship, like love, is expansive. It breaks man-made boundaries cast upon it, like the nuclear family model or artificial nation-state borders. My ancestors are disabled people who lived looking out of institution windows, wanting so much more for themselves. It's because of them that I know that in reflecting on what is a good life, an opportunity to contribute is as important as receiving support one needs. It's because of them I know the power of building hope with whatever you have, wherever you are, whoever you are with. My ancestors are queers who lived in America's South. It's because of them I understand the importance of relationships, place, and living life big, even if it's dangerous. All of my ancestors know longing. Longing is often our connecting place. I believe that our ancestors laugh, cry, hurt, to rage, celebrate with us. Most importantly, I believe they learn as we are learning, just as we learn from them. We grow knowledge and movements with them. We crib futurism with them. We demand and entice the world to change the way things have always been done with them. We change ourselves with them. They learn through us. When we become ancestors, we will also continue to learn. So please, I hope for those of you who've been moved by this and discovered this for the first time, please dig into Stacey's work. In a minute, I'm going to put in the chat box a link to a syllabus that Leah and I put together shortly after Stacy's death, so that people know the full range of her brilliance, which came in not just writing, but in videos and interviews and so much more. So thank you for allowing us to share this important piece by Stacy.
Yeah, thank you both for that reading. A question for Alice. Can you explain why the essays in the book are divided into the 4 sections that they are?
Thanks, Layla. Basically, because it was really difficult to categorize them by subject. So there are 37 different kinds of stories. Some of them are testimonies, some of them are eulogies, some are blog posts, some are Tumblr posts. One is a transcript from a podcast, but they're all really different subjects and super different kinds of people. And, I didn't want some sort of basic way to organize it. And I thought about what are some higher level themes or ways of grouping them that makes sense. So I came up with kind of 4 groups. Yeah, they kind of overlap too. They're not exactly discrete, but I think it worked. There are 4 kind of phases in the book. There's being, becoming, doing, and connecting. So these are all kind of different actions or kind of states of being. And I think that was a great way to kind of group these essays. And, the flow is in a way intentionally from like kind of an individual level in terms of us being who we are, us becoming who we want to be, to the very end when it comes to connecting, whether it's connecting with people within our communities, but also making connections with the world. And that's kind of the kind of process or idea from that.
That's a really good segue into our next question, which is how has interviewing folks with disabilities created connection and community? And how have you found out about and connected your work to the work that people are doing across the world? Both of you can answer this.
Leah, do you want to go first? And then I'll go after you.
Yes, hi. Oh, hold on. Okay, we're back. I think 90% of, this is important, by the way. It might sound funny, but I really mean it. I think 90% of the disability justice organizing and community I've been a part of has been like 3 Crips bitching on the internet. It's how have I found other disabled people I vibe with? Bitching, Facebook. Sometimes sitting in a government office, sometimes sitting on the bus, but a lot of it has just been, just talking about our lives. And that, a lot of the time, I think back to 10 years ago when disability justice was a word that it sometimes felt to me like there was 30 of us who used it, I remember going back to Toronto after being in Detroit for the United States Social Forum and just getting together with 3 other disabled femmes of color. And we just were like, let's have a brunch in someone's house. And this one's like, can we have it in bed on the heating pads? And we were like, yeah. And we just talked about our lives and we were like this, and there was a lot of like, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this. I don't know if I'm taking up too much space, but it's moments like that that are the seed of revolution and that are the revolution, right? There's so many, I think, sure, there's like demonstrations and policy and direct actions and all kinds of stuff, but also when we just find a place to be with each other and to talk about the realities of our lives, honestly, that's huge, right? So I may look all productive, but I spend around 90% of my time, especially right now. I'm going to tell you guys, this is the first shower I've had in 4 days. It has been sleep pants and a t-shirt and smelling really bad and just browsing Instagram a lot. I'm a regular sick autistic person who's really tired and really sad. And I think it's important to say that because I think that often those moments of just disabled connection, we still internalize like, oh, that's not the real work. And I'm like, no, that relationship building, including with ourselves and really learning for real, not in kind of a soundbite way to like do the bit by bit work of trying not to hate ourselves as disabled folks. That connection is the real work, that everything else that sometimes is more visible, whatever it comes from. And something I want to say briefly, that because I had prepared a little bit to say about Stacey's legacy, is that, and me and Alice were talking about this a little bit before we the Zoom call started, was that, I mean, Stacey was one of the most talented organizers I've ever met. You know, she was a working class, military family, Southern, Korean, and mixed race white, queer, non-binary femme. And the reason though that she was so good is that she wasn't like, oh, look at me, you know, I'm brilliant, everyone else is shit. She really was like, I'm an everyday disabled person. And I believe that every one of us everyday nobody disabled people, you know, especially disabled Black and brown people, who have been told all our lives, you're not smart enough, you're not what a leader looks like you can't actually create anything, like you're just whatever. She really believed that all of us who've been shitted on have skills that are absolutely crucial to create the next world. So the place that comes together for me is, I think, in those everyday moments of blog writing and writing complaints on Facebook that other disabled people connect with. That's where I found that connection. Yeah, if that makes sense. And I will turn it over to Alice because she is the real interviewer person of the two of us.
Barely. So just to piggyback on what Leah said, you know, did you know the internet gives me life? But also, I would say, not just during the pandemic, but before the pandemic, I would have to say, like, you know, chat groups, you know, being a thread of DMs, direct messages, whether it's, you know, Facebook group, Facebook messages, Twitter DMs, you know, on my own smartphone, just it's where you're in a safe space and you just be like, you know, OMG, did you see this? Or the way that we also just hold each other up, you know, cheer each other on. That really sustains me as a person. And I know that's been invaluable for me in these times where we feel, just overwhelmed, right, by the world, where people want us to die. People do not see the eugenics of this coronavirus pandemic. People do not value our lives and do not understand how we are not disposable. And this is happening way before this pandemic too, right? This is not new in terms of just another alt-right assault on multiply marginalized people. So I feel like the way we all give kind of support to one another in big and small ways, you know, it is in a way mutual aid. And, you know, I really want to mention Stacey too. That's, you know, she and I traded like funny gifts, funny, you know, just little like things that we just laughed and laughed online. And she cheered me on so much about this book. She was super excited to be in this book. And I just want to say that it's been very bittersweet that she died basically, 6 to 8 weeks before the launch of this book. But I'm also intensely grateful that I did have the chance to have her essay in this book, because I want the world to know about her. And this is just one way of doing it. And I know she's, wherever she is right now, she's laughing and just loving this conversation, and just, I feel her presence everywhere. And that's always going to be in the back of my mind as I do anything about this book, that her spirits will be with me. And in terms of just telling stories, I feel like tell stories now, and that's very exciting. In 2017, I started a podcast, and basically it's centered on almost all disabled people. There's every once in a while a non-disabled guest, but we continue to not have that many. There's the gulf of representation and media that's made by us and for us. We're nowhere close to parity yet. And, I can look at this as, oh, that's really shitty. But at the same time, there is so much space for us out there for us to carve out. And I think all of us have the capacity to do that in, different types of ways, right? Like sending a message to a friend saying, hey, how you doing? Just checking in on you. That's activism, that's organizing. Whether you're running a campaign, organizing people, doing social media, doing big things like policy stuff, whether you're protesting online or in person, it all counts. And I really want people to kind of expand their ideas of, just as Leah mentioned, what does a leader look like? What does organizing look like? People in the past have described me as an organizer, and I'm like, am I an organizer? So there's a lot of internal work as well that we all have to do to be comfortable with the different roles that we can play, but also really owning it and embracing it. So I just hope that everyone feels like we all have that power to tell our own stories. And that for me, I do think becoming politicized, and it does start with telling our own stories, or at least sharing stories about us. Because I think our truths and our lived experiences are incredibly beautiful, and it is really radical.
Thank you, Alice. Yeah, I think it's really important for people to understand that there are lots of different ways to organize, and organizing isn't just one thing, and it's not just one image of something. Yeah, like checking in on the people around you can be organizing, and that counts, and that's like necessary. So thank you for speaking to that. We also have a question for Leah. So Leah, you have an essay in the book called Still Dreaming Wild Disability Justice Dreams at the End of the World. It's a fantastic essay. Could you speak a bit to it and the process of writing it and all of that?
Oh, sure. Let me just come online here. Hi, this is Leah speaking. So Alice actually was like, hey, I'm doing this anthology. You want to write a follow-up to the other piece that you wrote about disabled people in the end of the world? And I was like, sure, because it's even more apocalyptic 2 years later, and it's even more apocalyptic as we speak. So yeah, it's a follow-up to a piece I wrote that some people might know of that was in Care Work that's called Cripping the Apocalypse. And yeah, it's a lot of things. I wanted to write about, I don't know, first of all, I wanted to write about just what some experiences I've had the last couple years where I'm like, God, it feels like simultaneously, like I live in the States. I think this is true a lot of places, but definitely in the US under Trump, it just feels like everyone is simultaneously completely frozen with fear because the hits just keep on coming. Everything is fascist and terrible and terrifying. And at the same time, there's such a blooming of disabled, Black, Indigenous, and people of color activism in so many ways. And I think the place the essay started was I was, doing speaking gigs with Care Work, and there's a t-shirt I wore a lot that's to those gigs that said the future is accessible. And I would do this thing where I'd be like, hey, so I want you to close your eyes or just take a minute and imagine a disability justice future, or just imagine an accessible future. What would it be like? And so much of the time I would have these, university, classrooms where people would just be like, I can't think of anything. And I would just be like, oh shit, really? And I was like, but also I get it, because people would be like, we're just trying not to die, like imagining some future of liberation. It's really hard, So I was thinking about that. I was thinking about how, I think a lot about how as a neurodivergent person under Trump, it's been like a 4-year panic attack, and it's really hard to imagine, to really dream big visionary dreams when you're just in fight or flight or, play dead mode, right? Which is what the last 4 years have been. But that also as disabled people, and particularly as mad/great neurodivergent people, I say this as a crazy person, we are always imagining some quote unquote crazy shit that's too much for the abled imagination, and then it works. So that's really how we're going to get out of this alive, is that. So I don't know, I wanted to write about that. I wanted to, again, record, I wanted to write down, here's some different experiences of that is us saving our own lives in the face of colonialism, climate chaos, anti-Black murder, ableism, all of the above together, the murder of trans women of color, on and on and on. That's everything from during the last 2 years of extreme air emergencies from climate change fueled wildfires in California. There's a group called Mask Oakland that, the city of Oakland didn't give out any masks. Mask Oakland was like one neurodivergent person who's like, I'm going to give out 80,000 masks for free, focusing on people who are living in tents or who don't have money, right? We did that. The work that Stacey and other people who are part of the Disability Justice Culture Club did with the Power to Live campaign, where last year during the power shutoffs, during the smoke emergency and the wildfires in California, the main power utility was like, oh, we've got a great solution. We'll just shut off all of the electrical grid. And then people who use ventilators and CPAPs and need refrigeration for insulin and meds were like, oh, you want us to die? And Stacey and the Power to Live campaign set up a completely grassroots, disabled-led mutual aid network that was like, do you need a generator? Here you go. Do you need an air purifier? We got you. Do you need someplace to go to plug in your power chair? There's this house right here. We came up with that, right? It's our people who came up with that. And it's interesting now with COVID, where it's like all these able people are learning so much about masks now that some of us already knew, and about isolation and viruses and immune systems. And so I wanted to write about that. And I also wanted, it was a hard essay to write, because I was like, okay, what do I actually want? It's not just survival. But I had some wild disability justice dreams just off the top of my head where I was like, you know, like among other things, I'm like, okay, so if climate chaos is flooding the coasts and the coastal areas are so expensive to live, the cities, and that's where a bunch of us have lived, what happens if as sick and disabled people, we figure out what if we all go someplace that's not underwater or on fire? What kind of community could we make? What kind of communities are already there, right? What if we, you know, in the States, there's the Green New Deal that's been proposed by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and other radical Black and brown women, you know, organizers and members of Congress. And I was like, what if we crypt that, you know? And I was like, what if there was a CARE Act? Like, what if, like in Uruguay, I don't know much about how it rolls out on the ground, but I do know in the last couple of years, they've made the right to well-paid unionized care, as I understand it, for disabled people, for elders, whoever needs it. It's part of the Constitution. What would it mean to dream that? And these are just legislative ideas, some of them, but also, I don't know, I'm just like, okay, like thinking about since Ayanna Pressley, who some people may know as an incredible radical Black feminist representative, came out as having an autoimmune illness. I'm just like, okay, so is she connected? Like, she's family, right? So like, how can we work together to be like, let's bring disability justice into all of these policy things we're pushing for at a really big level, and not just have it be a white rights agenda, but a disability justice agenda. I could go on. And then I also, the last thing I'll say is that I wanted to reach back and, you know, I talk a little bit about the ways that, and this is something I think a lot about, is the ways that before disability justice was a term, we were still doing disability justice work, right? And I share this anecdote about a friend of mine who I had back in the day when I lived in Toronto, where we were the two houses with ramps on our block, and both the ramps were very homemade, and property standards kept coming over and being like, you got to take that down. And the spaces that were made in those homes for disabled and mad and neurodivergent and deaf folks to just hang out and be with each other and eat food, and how we really tried to center people who were like, oh, that person's too ugly, quote unquote, too unpopular, they're too much. And we were like, no, everyone's welcome. I wanted to document that to say that we've been dreaming these dreams for a long time, and we're going to keep dreaming them and finding each other no matter what happens. And there's a lot we can't predict about what's going to happen. And it's something I think a lot about in terms of cripping resistance and looking at the rebellions that have been happening, you know, especially in the last 3 months since George Floyd's murder, and what it means as disabled people to be saying, you know, how do we make forms of revolution and resistance that are accessible for us, that specifically come from our disabled body minds, right? Because we know there's no revolution without us. It's not going to work if we're not there. My friend Cyrus Marcus Ware said that, SYRUSMARCUSWARE. So I don't know, I edited it 15 times. I don't know if it works, but I hope it does. But that's the piece. And yeah, it is bittersweet. It's bittersweet and also important to try and imagine a future when we win. And I want to say something that Stacey said a lot, which is that we are our own best strategy to win. We as disabled people, we as disabled Black and brown folks and queer and trans folks, we're our own strategy. We don't have to try and fit into somebody else's strategy.
Okay. I'm not even gonna try and follow that up. Thank you, Leah. Okay, so folks might have realized it's now 8:05. If it's okay with Alice and Leah, and if it's okay with our interpreters, and with Cart, and with the audience, we'd like to open it up to the audience to put questions that they may have to Alice and Leah in the chat.
I think Ruby's cut out. Was that just me? Yeah, Ruby froze. Yeah, so just put, yeah, send your question in the chat box, and Alice and Leah are welcome to read the question they want and answer out loud.
Is it okay if I start with the abolition question, Alice?
Go for it.
Okay. Well, I am an abolitionist, disabled, femme of color feminist and revolutionary, and I think they are absolutely bound up. We're not going to win abolition without disability justice, and we're not going to win disability justice without abolition. Abolition, the abolition of prisons, child welfare, the police state, psychiatric facilities, nursing homes, etc., like any place where people are locked up, is a fundamental part of what makes disability justice different from disability rights. We know that at least 50% of Black, Indigenous, and people of color who are murdered by the police are disabled Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Disabled, deaf, autistic, mad, chronically ill, etc. We're not going to win the end of police violence against our people unless we continue to lift up the ways in which racism, anti-indigeneity, anti-Black racism, and ableism come together behind the barrel of a gun, right? And something that I think is really important is that, and I'm excited to see it changing now, but you know, for a long time, there's been a gap between some psychiatric survivor and disabled organizers and some prison abolitionists, where we weren't necessarily seeing that our struggles were connected, right? I still witness some abolitionists saying, well, we have to get rid of the cops. And, you know, what people really need are more psychiatrists. You know, we need more beds in psych wards. And I'm like, oh, no, we don't. Or, you know, we need affordable housing. We need more forms of free care that is chosen by people who are neurodivergent. We need trauma healing. We need economic justice. We do not need to be locked up on a hold. We don't need more of that. And, you know, I saw a criticism that a lot of people who are disability justice based have lodged at white disability rights is, you know, for years you would see mainstream disability rights movements hold signs saying, oh, if, you know, you think prison's bad, try a nursing home. And it's like, no, prison's not better than a nursing home. They're both bad. They're both places where people are locked away and tortured and don't get to have personal autonomy. So if we can have a united front, we can win this. And I mean, you know, I don't have a lot of spoons. So I'm like, I really hope we can do this. But I see we're in an abolitionist moment that's so exciting, where abolition is being talked about and communicated so much more, you know, with so many more people than I could have dreamed of. And I think we're at a crucial moment where people are going, okay, but what do we actually replace prisons with? And I think this is a moment where everybody, but especially those of us who have experiences creating non-prison-based, non-carceral, like nobody gets locked up, places, or talking about those alternatives to psych wards and nursing homes, we need to be able to have our voices witnessed and our knowledge witnessed, so we can be like, so this is where the right to being able to live in community and getting community-based support, the right to consent, the right to no forced treatment is so important. Because if we get rid of prisons, but then we just take an army of social workers and lock people up and give people, you know, drugs we don't want or treatment we don't want, that's not a win, right? So I could go on, but I mean, those are some of my things. And, you know, as always, I do want to lift up, sorry, there's so many questions, I'm going to stop, but I have more to say about this. Thank you for your question.
Yeah, and I just want to add to what Leah said, you know, so I probably would not identify myself as an abolitionist because I don't think I've done the work, enough of the work in terms of really understanding it. And there have been really people doing the work for years, if not decades, that really should be the ones who are leading this, to be centered on these conversations. But I will say that it's been interesting where every once in a while I'll tweet something, I'll say, abolish all chartered cities. I use the term chartered cities because we're not just talking about prisons, as Leah mentioned. There's so many different types of charceral cities, and they all kind of intersect as well. And I think it's been interesting too that when I do tweet out these very simple statements, abolish, like your quote tweets, in relation to maybe, let's say, an article about the huge numbers of outbreaks in nursing homes. I want to bring it to this larger perspective that's not just about nursing homes, right? It's not just about prisons. And there's always going to be a reply from somebody, but there's like, well, my father or my grandma has dementia, and, how do you propose this? It's not safe. And again, this also speaks, to my mind, to the lack of imagination. And this is why dreaming wildly, dreaming open, this whole, like, let's harness our creativity. And I think as disabled people, we are so creative, so innovative, that we do have the knowledge and the know-how and the skills to build the future we want, and the future that we all deserve, not just for us, but for everyone. But I do feel like that's part of the work, is to really have people understand, number one, we don't have to have a blueprint to know what's right, to know what justice and liberation should be, but also we also need to encourage people to really open their minds to the possibilities. 20, 30 years ago, people would say X, Y, Z is impossible, but it's not, because there were people who dared to dream. And I think collective dreaming is an incredible part of building laying the groundwork for the future that we need. And I think I'm going to just read a response to a quick question by Jessica Odie, who asked, is there any advice on having the confidence to trust our knowledge and our experiences as disabled folk? I often feel my experiences won't be enough justice or representation for the disabled community. Parentheses, context, I'm a designer focusing on accessibility and inclusive design, and I have a physical disability. So I would just say that, we need all kinds of people with all kinds of interests and passions. Like, if you are a disabled designer and want to work on access and inclusive design, I am just super excited for you. Clearly, the world of design needs more disabled people. So, I think some of the things that we do to keep ourselves from fully realizing our potential is this fear, the anxiety of, like, am I not enough? Or am I, am I being too narrow? And I think we just gotta kind of work through that kind of, stuff, because we are good at what we're good at. And I think it doesn't have to be for everyone. It's not gonna please everyone. And I think we've got to make things work for us and really let us shine as much as possible. And that takes time, right? Like, you just gotta kind of work up to it and feel more comfortable about yourself, especially when you discover other people that also want to do similar things. So other disabled designers, for example, Jessica, who I know there's people out there doing the similar things as well. You're gonna gain more confidence So if you care about gaming, if you care about cats, if you care about climate change, please just live the life that you want and not what people expect, what a disabled activist looks like. To really make it your own. And I guess that would be my advice.
Yeah, and just, this is Leah speaking, just to quickly add one thing, I just want to say that I have never met a disabled person in my life who has not been like, oh, I don't know if I really, get to count, like maybe I'm not disabled enough. Maybe I'm not the right kind of disabled. Like every single person I've met who's disabled has struggled with that. I've struggled with that for years. And I just want to say that maybe this isn't true for you, but I think a lot of the time it comes from the fact that, the medical model really just tells us that, oh, you've got to pass these tests to qualify as disabled. Like, I mean, the second time I went back to college, I was like, oh, I'm going to get accommodations. Yay, I'm a little empowered. And they were like, well, you're going to bring your proof, right? Your proof that you're disabled. And I was like, oh, that language. Right, because it's not enough for me to know who I am, right, and what I am. I have to have a doctor sign off on it. And that's just one small example of a system that gets in our heads that makes us feel that we're not enough disabled, we're not the right kind of disabled, and our contributions don't matter, right? And I want to just say that I think that for me, it's helpful to think of it as a process of unpacking internalized ableism, and that I can do that by telling myself, like it might sound like affirmations, maybe it is, but that I'm like, yeah, that's the ableist jerk brain that I've internalized. It's telling me that we all have something to contribute, and we've all been told, oh, you're not this white abled man who's straight and cis, what do you got? You're nothing. And actually the opposite's true. So I wanted to say that. Okay, it's not super short, but it's something. And then I wanted to speak to Lisa's question about any suggestions on ways to heal a disabled person of color. Yeah, huge question, such an important question. Well, I just wanted to say, and again, this may not be helpful, but I'll just throw it out there. And I don't know what kinds of trauma it is or things like that, but I think I just wanted to start by acknowledging that a lot, not all, but a lot of trauma healing resources out there don't consider ableism as part of it, and they definitely sometimes don't consider ableism that we face as Black and brown people, right? Or they're not accessible to us. So that's real. And it's not, you're not doing anything wrong if you're like, oh, I'm trying to find a space where I can really be all of me to address trauma, and it's really hard to find. It's not you, it's racist ableism. And having said that, I don't know, I can share some things that I found helpful over my lifetime. I think that for me, when I was healing, abuse trauma, when I was starting to be on a healing path around family abuse and sexual abuse as a child, like a lot of my healing was on my own. I journaled, I listened to myself. I was like, how do I reparent myself? How do I teach myself ways to be really sweet to myself that I wasn't taught in my family of origin or by society? And so with my disability, I have balance issues, so I can't ride a bicycle, but I can ride a trike. And one of the things I did when I was 23 was I lucked out and there was this real junker $120 adult tricycle that this shop in Kensington Market in Toronto had. And the guy actually, I had $50. I was very poor. And I was like, and he's like, just put it down on layaway. Just bring me $20 when you can. He's a total sweetheart. And I would just ride that trike and be like, oh, I definitely didn't have anyone to talk to about it, but I was like, I'm healing my trauma because I was totally bullied as a disabled kid who couldn't ride a bike like the normal children. And I was just like, I'm having such accessible pleasure on this thing. And, a lot of my friends who were able-bodied, they didn't get it. They didn't get that I was healing abuse and ableism riding my trike, but I was. And to a point, it didn't matter if they didn't get it. I got it. And I was having an experience in my body of like, oh, I'm healing that little disabled kid who was mocked for having a different body that wasn't able to, you know, for being autistic, even though I didn't know it. So I would just say, like, you might, I mean, healing's just, it's like a huge iceberg, mountain, huge terrain. And it might feel like, I don't even know what I need. I don't even know what I want. Where do I start? But if you can even start with one thing inside you where you're like, I think that feels like pleasure, that feels like joy, that feels like something I didn't get that I want to get, and give that to yourself, or even start researching how to give it to yourself. That really helps. I also think that, you know, a lot of my healing around all kinds of trauma that for me often is where, you know, ableism and abuse have intersected, like for so many of us, has just happened by hanging out, you know, in disabled community, which for me was, a lot of it was when Facebook groups were more of a thing. And there was a group I've written about called Sick and Disabled Queers that Billie Rain, Billie, Rain, Rain, founded. And it was just, yeah, it was Crips talking. And it was one of those places where I had a lot of my like, oh shit, oh, that thing I'm so ashamed of, that I've been shamed for, that I do, that's just an autistic thing. That's not a bad thing. Wow, okay. You know, just through witnessing other people talk about their lives and their experiences, or feeling like, oh, I can share a little bit about my experience and be held and witnessed with kindness and understanding and compassion. That was really healing for me. And then I got really lucky, and you know, my therapist who I found, I'm gonna pause for, my therapist who I found, she didn't know she was autistic when we started working together, but then we figured it out at the same time. And then it was great because we were reading all the same autism blogs, and she was like, okay, try this thing when you're overwhelmed. And I was like, and I just thank spirit for her every day. So I want to share that to be like, it's not like there's a million disabled, chronically ill, autistic, deaf counselors or healing resources falling down from the sky, but they do exist. And it's worth being like, I'm going to start researching if that's something I'm looking for. And sometimes also I get healing from just looking at like disabled people of color on Instagram and being like, oh, cool, you look great. Maybe I look great. You know, maybe you're talking about this thing that you've experienced. Oh, me too. So there's healing with that. That's just a little bit. And just, we're not taught to have compassion and love for ourselves. So we have to practice it. And it's a new habit we're practicing. So it's okay if it's a little rusty at first. I hope that's helpful. Thank you for asking the question.
And I would just add, very briefly, because I know we're probably really over time, I would just say take pleasure, you know, I think just take pleasure in life. We deserve all the pleasure and joy that we should get. So, you know, especially at these times, we just, you know, also part of healing or just, you know, getting through things is to really, you know, finding the pockets of pleasure and time for yourself. So that's about it.
Layla and I are just texting, being like, we're ready to cry. Thank you so much to both of you. We're gonna wrap it up here. This was incredible. It was incredible to hear you both speak. And I just, before everybody gets off the call, I know we have a bit, Layla has a point about the snow removal survey for people that are based in Hamilton, Ontario.
Yes, many of you are from Hamilton because that's where we're based. So if you can, please fill out Hamilton's snow removal survey. The city's collecting data after much push from disabled Hamiltonians on whether or not they should fund clearing the sidewalks of snow in the winter. Safe sidewalks are a right. It's difficult and dangerous to get around on the sidewalks in the winter with mobility aids. So please tell them that snow removal is important to you. The survey takes about 10 minutes. I'm gonna post the link in the chat right now, and it's been up on DJNO's Twitter page. So please do that.
And with that, now we are at the end of our event. Thank you so much to Alice and Leah for being here and sharing all that you have shared. It means a lot to hear from both of you and to share in the disabled brilliance of all.
I think Ruby cut out again. Yeah, do you wanna go for it?
Oh, hi, sorry, my internet is bad right now. Thank you to our interpreters, Jennifer and Amina, for all of their work. Just gonna put, just in case you missed it, Layla, can you put the Disability Visibility Project website in the chat? Everybody go get the book by whatever means you can. It's a fantastic book. A lot of these essays are available on the website as well. And there's a lot of podcasts and things and links to things that have been shared in the chat. Feel free to sift through it. Other than that, that's it. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a fantastic night. In the chat that there's a plain language and audiobook version too. And also buy and borrow Leah's books. Yes. Leah put her Instagram in the chat. And yeah, take care, everyone.